Port Spain, which had been the Wild West when we arrived here in sort of early 2000s, had been pretty wild, and a lot of stuff. The police really started cracking down in Spain, and of course, a lot of these kind of travellers and people who are up to no good moved across the border to Portugal, because there the police force was worse paid than Spain. They had less policemen. It was just as rugged and hidden, and he was able to sort of, these sort of new age traveller societies, these kind of van lifer types. He was able to drift in and out of these communities, basically selling drugs and doing odd jobs. There were times when he would settle down a bit with a girlfriend, and we now know he rented this house for, let's have a look, for 7 years. He lived just outside Pradaluz in this little house and of course he desperately didn't want anyone to find it. So when he was arrested, he gave different addresses, said he was living in his van. But he could blend into the community there and find like-minded people who wanted to do the same things as he wanted to do, which was, PDFs.
How was he able to sustain himself, and how did he purchase the creepy structure, the property that they showed us, where the swimming costumes are found of the kids?
Well, that's interesting. That was, we saw that last night, and that's something new that came out. I mean, I don't know what your take was on the documentary. I felt like the narrative was generally good. It tried to explain as best as possible why the police think this guy's guilty. I can tell you now, there's a lot more that didn't go in that documentary. Stuff that they did know, but they couldn't put in, and stuff they didn't know. But I think what's particularly interesting was some of the photographic and video evidence that we saw from the box factory that he owned in New Wiegersleben, which was the converted box factory in East Germany. He bought in 2008 for 22,000, I think it was, and he wanted to sort of turn that into a kind of sculpture garden, creative art project, or whatever it was. But that's where he effectively stored, I think at one point, nearly 20 vehicles, which the police, by the way, took lots of them, a lot more than people realize, off the land, and obviously scoured for DNA and whatnot. But in the photos we saw last night for the first time, we saw the burial site where he buried his dog, Charlie. And underneath the body of Charlie was this plastic Aldi bag, Lidl bag, full of stuff that he'd hidden. And I think we saw for the first time a photograph of the 6 USB sticks and 2 memory sticks were on there. There were lots of photos and stuff that he shared, and his fantasies, and even an autobiography that he was writing. And of course, you also saw the 75 children's swimming costumes. A lot of them were in his Winnebago. You also saw the children's bikes, little toys. I mean, I've been around that place 3 times now, and there's still lots of evidence of bits and bobs they hadn't taken. And I do believe there's, that's some of it there. I do believe there's a lot more stuff there that they possibly didn't find. I'm told they did find it, because not only did they spend 3 days there initially, the 2016, they went back again. The BK Bundeskriminalamt in Wiesbaden, who were running the investigation, they went back and had a very, very good look at it again. Obviously, they told me they properly scoured all the tunnels underground, and this was somewhere that Brueckner loved. It was his fantasy, these underground tunnels, this sort of former, what I believe could have been some sort of concentration camp. And I think that, he loved the fact that he could store all his cars there. And I'm pretty sure that some pretty nasty things happened there. People who went there, visited, said that it had a very sinister atmosphere when he was there. And it's clearly, the money he got from that, interestingly, came from a robbery, a burglary of a house where he took 100,000 euros. And he was a very prolific burglar, so he was often taking. Now, there's the mask, you see. Now that's the mask that they found, but also there are photographs we've seen for the first time where he put on Photoshop some masks onto him naked when he was standing by the Irade Lake, where of course the police searched, if you remember, 2 years ago in Portugal. And some of these photos where he's naked, and often he has an erect member, very odd photos that he took. I don't know. I think he took a lot of himself, but I don't know who took them. That's a fascinating idea to know who might have taken them, actually. But in these pictures, he's actually mapped up a black balaclava onto his face to show what he would look like if he was, say, attacking a victim. And of course, we know that he attacked various victims. He's in prison now for 7 years for the R of a very old, unfortunately now passed away pensioner, American pensioner, and he wore a mask like the one we just seen. And that mask also was the one he wore when Hazel Bean was raped as well. And she's convinced that she saw him. You heard in court, she said, went to court bravely, gave her evidence. She's absolutely certain, and I believe her, completely believe her, that that he's the man who raped her. His piercing blue eyes. She also saw on his leg a mark, which has now come out and been proven to be the case. But yet, for some reason, the judge in that case decided there was no mark and there was no reason to look at the marks or photos. Again, at the box factory, they found a suitcase, which I don't know if you've seen that picture. There was a suitcase, and in that suitcase was very weirdly, according to Rob's testimony last night, he said there were lots of photographs of children, girls, I think mostly, and oddly some phone numbers, a great bunch of phone numbers. They didn't say. I don't think Rob knows who they, and in fact, I don't think he's got phone numbers, but the police obviously have those phone numbers. I don't know if they're for mothers of children, or I don't know, or for paedophile or PDFs or whatever it is. You know, I don't know if they're. Again, this is something that I'll be exploring more over the coming year or two, and I do think this case isn't going to be closed anytime soon, Shaun. But I do think we're coming towards the end game.
Could you explain the significance then of the insurance document?
Yeah, that's right. Well done for getting all this stuff, by the way. So yeah, this is interesting. This is very interesting. So this is something that I do know about. It's not in my book, but it will be in the next one. And this links to, you may have read that in my first book I published that he attended the so-called Dragon Festival in Orgova, which is in the Alpujarras Mountains of Granada, not far from the Costa del Sol. And this festival is where basically, effectively, the world's New Age travelers go and party for what used to be about 2 weeks. You know, they'd arrive a week before and then they wouldn't leave for a week afterwards. And the police just didn't know what to do, so they just sort of let them stay there. And if you see the photographs of this event, it's staggering, because it's sort of, as far as the eye can see, wall-to-wall caravans and Winnebagos. I mean, it looks like a sort of gypsy festival, like the Apple, what's it called? What's that fair they have in England where they all go, the horse fair, Appledore horse fair, whatever it is, but for kind of New Age travelers. And everyone had a sound system, and they were pumping out sound all the way through the night till 6, 7, 8 in the morning. I remember Chris Stewart, who lived up there, who's driving over lemons, the Genesis drummer, said all he would hear for like 3 days or 4 days was just bang, bang, bang. Anyway, Christian loved going to this festival and went certainly in 2007 and 2008. And this document here, and of course, what's interesting is one of the witnesses in the case, Helga Bushing, who knew Brueckner very well. Helga, bless him, said he's now unfortunately not very well, living in Italy, but he's a decent, really decent guy. And I mean, that's all relative, because he's been in prison lots of times for theft and drugs, so I don't know how decent he is. But anyway, the point is, I believe him when he said that Christian confessed to him that he took Maddie from the apartment, and he told Helga Bushing at this festival, the Dragon Festival in 2008, March. They said last night, April. It was March, in fact, that she had not screamed when she was taken out of the apartment, and Helga clearly saw that as a confession. And Brueckner, having realized he'd told Helga this, the look of horror on his face, he immediately kind of freaked out and walked off. And what Helga said in the court actually recently, and we'll say again in the Maddie case when it comes to court, was that he, in the middle of the night, got up and left and vanished, took his Winnebago, and off he went. And so that document you had up there, I'll just quickly explain it, proves that, and he denied he was there, but proves that he was actually at this festival. So at least it backs up Helga's claims. And the document shows that his Winnebago was in an accident with a Porsche, a local Spanish-driven Porsche by a woman in a petrol station just coming out in Orkava at the time. And it's got Brueckner's signature on it. He's confirmed it. He nudged another car. I think he took off the wing mirror. Certainly scratched the door. I can't remember. I'll have to check my notes, but definitely that happened at the time of the Dragon Festival. So he was 100% there. And again, I know because we found evidence we think was in his van and him at the year before. So that was just in the run-up to Maddie going missing, being snatched. He was there again because he was traveling around a lot with this Winnebago VW van, and he took it even though the owners didn't want him to. He took it to the festival. So he was a regular there with all these people.
All right, viewers, I am here with John Clarke, and he's the author of a book that's absolutely terrified me. Don't read it late at night. It is harrowing about Christian B. And the link for that book is in the description box, as is John's website. So if you've just joined us, I'm going to do a quick poll. Put a 1 in the chat, viewers, if you managed to watch the Channel 4 documentary that was released last night about Madeleine McCann and Christian B. Put a 2 in the chat if you've not yet managed to watch it, just so we can get an idea of how many of you saw it. Me and Jen were up till midnight watching it. John, is it also the case that one of his vehicles had a compartment in it that you could hide a child in?
Very much so. I believe it wasn't just one. I believe it was a number of vehicles that were adapted to carry not just potentially children, but drugs, primarily moving drugs around across borders. Let's not forget that moving from Portugal to Germany and back, he would be going across various borders, and you could, of course, be picked up at any time on a border. So he had to have these compartments. But in particular, he had this one Winnebago, and there was a fascinating chat I had with the father of one of his girlfriends, a woman called Nicole Fellinger, who he was sort of living with on and off. Not long after, well, actually, he met her before Maddie went missing. At Christmas 2006, he had a party, a leaving party from prison, and I don't know whether anything they certainly struck up a good friendship. Whether anything actually happened sexually, I couldn't say, but they certainly got a very special relationship. Around the time that Maddie went missing, certainly she'd separated from her partner Matthias, and Christian was sort of moving in on her, and they became very close. It's fairly well documented that while she was there, Christian often turned up in the house where she was obviously living with orphans. She was looking after these orphans from Germany, these poor kids that were brought in who were 13, 14, 15, who had been abused, most of them, or certainly, if not sexually, certainly physically abused, and had difficult upbringings. And of course, they were living in her house, this rather creepy house that she was renting in the hills about 45 minutes inland from the Algarve. And of course, Christian, this is his paradise, isn't it? Children, abused children, he could hang out. So he regularly hung around at this house in Foral. And in particular, he had this big Winnebago, which he again bought from a robbery where he'd made a fair amount of money along with this lady. And again, this is pretty well catalogued. She was brought in for questioning and over this. And he pretty much he confirmed it to a lot of people. He hasn't been prosecuted for it, but his name's been brought into the investigation. And this Winnebago was parked up inside the house in Foral, where these children, these orphans, were living. And what's more interesting is that Nicole went to pick up her dad, Dieter, from the airport in Faro when he was flying over to come and visit her. And so she went to pick him up, and she left her children in the garden with Christian, might have been the house, to play. So he was effectively babysitting her children. Yeah, mind boggles. So anyway, so when Dieter arrived at the house, he said the first thing he saw was Christian and his young granddaughter sitting on the lawn with Christian sort of playing with her on the lawn. Yeah, I know, horrible. And so then he had this very weird conversation with Christian B, or Christian Brueckner, where he told him that he had this Winnebago, would he like to have a look around? And of course, Dieter was fascinated, this huge vehicle. and he kind of took him on board and showed him around. And there was a sort of like almost like a dance floor at the back, and there was a circular table, a dining room area, and showed him the bedrooms. And he was very proud. And they said, "Oh, and I've even got a space that's big enough to smuggle a small child." And it's so he's like, Dieter was like, "What? You know, what did you just say?" You know, so he said it's big enough to smuggle, you know, a huge take marijuana. He told him he smuggled grass in it, marijuana. I mean, he told his potential father-in-law, a father he'd never met, a guy he'd never met before, the father of his then girlfriend, that he was smuggling drugs and had a compartment big enough to smuggle a small child. Now, was that just a slip of the tongue? You know, you have to kind of question, first of all, that he had it. Secondly, that he even said that. And there's the other question, you know, because there were these two agencies that were bringing these children over from Germany. We're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children were coming over at the time to Portugal. You have to question, was he bringing some of these children in and in his vehicles? Was he working with, because these agencies were dodgy as hell. They got investigated, shut down, fined. It turned out that they were totally unregulated. And so therefore, was he part of the whole operation? I'm told that she was definitely part of it and closely linked to it. But was Christian helping in some way?
So it seems like he was kind of giving clues here and there, like the statements that he dropped, the one you just cited, and also, you know, when he said that Maddie kept quiet. But also, if you've got a load of incriminating memory sticks, why on earth would you bury them under a dead dog? Why wouldn't you just burn them and throw them in the river and completely destroy them? He actually left them intact under a dead dog, which he probably knew that, you know, if they ever brought a cadaver dog out, it would hit on that.
It's really, really interesting point, Shaun. I mean, they do say, don't they, that criminals always like to keep mementos and keep things. And, you know, you just wonder, these are things that he's been working on for a long time. They're obviously close to his heart. We don't know exactly what's on all these things, but I can tell you there's lots of stuff, and it's pretty sickening, a lot of it. And you just, I mean, he left things in various places. In particular, unfortunately for him, he left a hair on the bed of his last victim, this 72-year-old woman that he tied up and raped and filmed in the most disgusting circumstances. So he did leave things accidentally and deliberately. Clearly, those things that he left underneath the dead body of Charlie were there because he wanted to work on them again, and he obviously treasured them. Unfortunately, I don't know if you're aware of this. When they raided his apartment, his kiosk in Braunschweig, they picked up a camera and a couple of other memory sticks. And on the camera were some photographs of a 5-year-old girl that he was molesting at the time, who was the daughter of a friend of basically a friend of his daughter, who he molested. And in the photographs, you can see apparently not the most horrific stuff, but you can see he's clearly doing some molesting. And unfortunately, those photographs appeared in the hall that was found at the box factory, at this you know, where they found these memory sticks. And unfortunately, because they tried him over that case with the 5-year-old and found him guilty, and he got 18 months, they couldn't try him for any of the other stuff found on any of those memory sticks, because under German law, you can't use the same hall again. So there's a kind of technicality there. So yeah, I mean, the mind boggles, Shaun. So there may be loads of other kids that he abused, and other people and other kids on those things, but they can't. The police apparently can't prosecute over any of it.
Just what they showed at the box factory was so disturbing. I mean, he had a mattress there, as if that's where he was doing his evil deeds, on this filthy mattress, and then the kids' toys, and then why so many little girls' swimming outfits? Wasn't it like 70